Wait. Hold on a second. I'd just like to say something. I've been debating with myself on whether or not I should do this, but I've come to a decision. I'm gonna start using my actual voice in future videos like this. I understand that not everybody's going to enjoy the sound of my voice, hence why I've been using text right now, but I feel that actually speaking will help me convey emotion better. So with that out of the way, it's time for another commentary. Until I can actually be bothered to draw an avatar for myself, I'm gonna use Gene Starwin from Outlaw Star to fill that role, because what's a commentary without an anime avatar, am I right? So a couple things before we start. First off, the video I'll be commenting on is kind of a year old at this point, but I still feel like the issues that need to be addressed, and trust me, there's quite a few. Second of all, while I may come across as a bit harsh in this commentary at times, let it be known that I bear no ill feelings toward the target, or should I say, targets of this commentary, nor am I trying to act superior to them. Believe me, I don't want to come across as some kind of pretentious jerk in these kinds of videos. That is the last thing I'd want to do. Now, as you saw from my introduction, this video is going to be on That Creepy Reading. You see, he made a video detailing the top 20 disturbing games you have not heard of, which features narration from him and a couple of other users, which is fine and dandy. However, the issues with this video slowly start to become apparent the more I watched, and that brings you here. So, to avoid the risk of boring you further, let's dive in.
Video games as a medium has evolved. Yes, back in the early days, we were much more PC than we were now. And video games are very much seen as a children's toy. However, in the 90s, that all changed due to the rise of other consoles besides the big corporate powerhouse known as Nintendo, and the rise of PC gaming.
Okay, I have a few things to say about this introduction. First off, I feel as if it goes on for a bit too long. It's good to inform viewers about the subject matter on the list, but when your opening clocks in at 1 minute and 40 seconds, it starts to come off as tedious.
This list contains disturbing games that are also horrible examples of humanity that contain no artistic value beyond the shock of the product itself. We will let you as the viewer decide which is which. With that being said, let's start the top 20 most disturbing games.
Also, the sticky paddle says that they'll let the viewer decide which games are the ones that aren't bad, and the ones that are
horrible examples of humanity that contain no artistic value beyond the shock of the product itself.
But as we go into this list, you'll see that that statement isn't exactly true. Yeah, there's a fair bit of projection in this review, especially from Sticky himself, but we'll get into that in due time. Also, skipping the first entry because I have nothing really to say about it.
Luna Game is very interesting to say the least. Unlike Sad Satan and other hoax games, Luna Game appeared under very mysterious circumstances. Sad Satan appeared after a story about it surfaced and made it a very popular subject, while Luna Game came in the very early phases of the Brony fandom. Someone uploaded it to a popular Brony site, and within less than 6 hours, the site retracted the post and made a formal apology. After said apology, the site tightened up its submitting requirements, even having someone review every submission before it goes through. However, what about Luna Game itself? Really, its horror comes from its simplicity. You're playing as Luna in a Mario ripoff clone. You are thinking nothing of it. Wow, this is Mario with ponies, and it's kinda stupid looking. It seems like a very tongue-in-cheek video game, where Mario is now a pony. At the time, a lot of bronies were experimenting with pixel art, and it did not raise any suspicion when it was uploaded.
So I looked into this whole Luna Game thing myself for the purpose of this video, and I honestly have to ask, is this really it? When you take away the context of it's an innocent looking game that was uploaded to a brony website, but that turned out to be spooky, this game doesn't really seem to have much to offer in the disturbing department. On its own, it seems more like the kind of generic Sonic.exe parodies that you'd see some ordinary gamers playing, rather than a genuinely disturbing game. I don't know. I know this is an opinion list, of course, but Luna Game just seems like a weak entry for a list like this, especially when you consider the previous entry featured a 12-year-old girl getting tortured in hell. Wait a second. Isn't this list supposed to be on games we've never heard of? I'm no gamer, but even I've heard of Corpse Party. The title makes it sound like these games are supposed to be obscure, which to be fair, most of them are, so the inclusion of something as well-known as Corpse Party doesn't really make sense here.
It should also be mentioned that there is an anime produced about the series. It's, of course, uncensored and considered to be one of the most fucked up and downright disturbing animes of all time. And that's saying something.
Alright, it's one thing to keep yourself from sounding dull or monotonous, but suddenly raising your voice like that when talking about how disturbing something is just comes off as forced and, dare I say, cringeworthy.
On April 20th, 1999, a planned attack occurred at Columbine High School involving shootings, bombs, propane tanks, and other explosive devices. Almost 6 years later, an RPG based on the events of the shooting was created by Danny Ledone. Players assumed the role of gunmen Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold and act out the events of the massacre. In contrast to the 16-bit style, it actually used digitized photographs from the shooting and voice samples from news reports. The game received overwhelmingly negative responses from players, the media, and those affected by the massacre.
Now this point's going to make more sense later on, but this entry is what I'd like to see more of on this list. Talking about a lesser known game based on a touchy subject, but doing so in a neutral way, rather than treating it like some kind of reprehensible thing. The lack of bias and professional attitude on display here really makes this particular entry work.
The game consists of several levels where you are attempting to kill United States soldiers and breaking into U.S. military bases. The final level is entitled Hunting Bush Like a Rat, and has you breaking into a bunker where you have to take out Bush. The end battle is almost humorous as you are easily able to kill him with a grenade launcher, but it only serves to suggest that America is weak to the youth who actually play this game. In general, the game is easy and made intentionally so for this very purpose. It's hard to find the game itself. However, if you do, playing this game as an American, it can be quite unsettling. I do not condone or endorse this game in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, this is why you have to be careful in discussing subject matter like this. Especially since, like you said, this game is propaganda, something that exists for many different reasons. Calling it disturbing just because it happens to be anti-American propaganda isn't going to look too good for your image, to be honest. Let's not forget all the various works that portray Americans as the heroes going up against foreign threats. Not to mention that the US Army is far, far from innocent itself. Just saying, sometimes you have to look at something from a non-American standpoint, because if you don't, you may end up unintentionally coming across as insensitive.
This video game is sponsored by the Communist Youth League and puts the player into the role of the Chinese army fighting Japanese soldiers during the Second Sino-Japanese War. The League has deemed the product a patriotic game and will not include an option for players to play as Japanese units. You select from 17 Chinese characters deriving from all walks of life. The game is generating a lot of hype from young Chinese gamers even before its release. The violence level is reduced and fighting is only shown in miniature form. In addition to this, killing of other soldiers is prohibited.
Now there's one main problem I have with this entry, and it's the simple fact that this game can't be found anymore, so all you have to go by is its basic premise, some Wikipedia information, and a couple minutes of trailer footage. I honestly think this would have worked better as an honorable mention, since there's no way to actually experience the game for yourself, or really know what the gameplay is like.
Zog's Nightmare is the definition of Nazi garbage, and I don't have any problem saying it. While I, admittingly, am no social justice warrior, the idea that Zog, Zionist-occupied government, has people that follow it, quite frankly, makes me sick. Several documentaries on the subject, including some that have little children playing this game because parents won't let them play anything else, is just fucked up in every sense of the term. If you don't know what the Zionist-occupied government is, it's a racist conspiracy theory that Jewish people control the government from the shadows. Zog's Nightmare is a disturbing game. It's a piece of bullshit neo-Nazi racist trash. There is nothing redeeming about this game. Period.
While I, of course, can't argue the wrongness of Zog, One major problem I have in this segment is how preachy it comes across. It's possible to talk about both this game's content and Zog itself without going on about how disgusting it is. Countdown lists like these are made to inform viewers of interesting topics, and having the host project so much just makes the experience a bit off-putting. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that games like this are morally wrong. At the very least, you should probably go about discussing stuff like this in a more mature manner without resorting to AVG and tier insults.
This game technically does not even exist, and it's due to the concepts that this game presents. Starts off with you as a orange jumpsuit wearing prisoner of Guantanamo. You're supposed to kill the guards and escape or live life and die under their horrible oppression. The guards were originally United States served armed security personnel, basically military. However, after controversy happened, they changed this to mercenaries. That's when the Scottish government demanded to see the contents of the game. So far, they have found the content so messed up and so lewd that it led to the studio being shut down and the game never being released. Apparently, the game was much more violent than your average affair, and it made many who saw it become physically uncomfortable.
Now I have the same issue for the segment that I did the one for Anti-Japan War Online. This is a game that hasn't been released, so it's impossible to truly determine how disturbing it really is. At this point, I feel like these kinds of games should have their separate lists. Postal? Really? Isn't this game fairly well known, like, even more so than Corpse Party? May I remind you, this is a list detailing lesser known games. Why put something as well known as Postal into a list like this? I know this sounds like a nitpick, but it really is disappointing not to see one, but two games so far that have missed half the point of this list.
The horrifying aspects of this game is not presented at first, but it really does come from its story and atmosphere. You learn that you are killing innocent civilians and US troops alike, and that's enough to end it there. You can be considered the bad guy in this, and the fact that all the killing is going on makes you question why you're even doing such things. This game was made to test your moral fiber and challenges you with tough decisions that are just heart-wrenching and downright terrible.
I think that this entry would be a bit more interesting if you went more in depth as to what the story for this game entails, because a little bit of context would help viewers like me better understand the disturbing nature of this game. The descriptions you provide are solid, but not knowing anything about the story or who the main character is supposed to be kind of makes it harder to soak in the whole disturbing factor.
Divi Dead is a Japanese 2D adult game released by Seizeware in 1998. The game's theme falls into the category of adult horror, as it deals with supernatural and sexual topics. And I have to say, life has been rough for Rimaru Hayabuka. I hope I got the translation right. Bedridden as a child with a mysterious illness, he's had to spend most of his time alone, drugged, wondering if he would live to adulthood. Now, however, things are getting better for him. His health has improved. He only experiences the occasional seizure. Also, he's been enrolled in his uncle's distinguished institution. This only leaves one to wonder what the hell is going to happen afterwards.
Okay, I was originally going to talk about how I felt that the segment could have been improved if you include the summary at the beginning, but then I discovered something. It's being read directly off the Wikipedia article for this game. This might not have been so bad except for a couple things. First off, when giving the premise for the game, you could have left one bit of information in that could have made it easier to understand where the disturbing aspect of this game kicks in. Second of all, it gives me the impression that you haven't actually played this game, an impression that's backed up by the fact that the on-screen footage obviously wasn't recorded by you. I know this isn't a big deal, but it just kind of gives off a lack of sincerity that this entry could have otherwise had.
Two young Iranian nuclear scientists, Saeed and his wife Maryam, are kidnapped by the US military and are sent to a prison in Israel. An Iranian special operations agent is sent to Israel to save the scientists and 4 other Iranians. As an American, it really does set a feeling of unease.
I refer to my previous point for this one. Calling a game disturbing just because the Americans are the antagonists just kind of makes you look thin-skinned, to be honest. And that might not even bother me that much if it wasn't the only thing you contribute to this game's whole disturbing factor.
School Days
is a fairly well-known game. That's the third time a not-so-obscure game has made it onto this list. But here, the not-so-obscure choice is made worse by giving it such a high spot on this list, which really does make it feel rather anticlimactic. And again, I wouldn't have such a problem with this entry if it wasn't for the title of this video. You really couldn't have placed a lesser-known game at the number 2 spot? And that's all I really have to say for this video. Final thoughts. This list just feels like wasted potential for the most part. I normally find this kind of stuff to be interesting, but it just suffers from too many flaws to really be considered such. It's kind of hard to take the list seriously when the host acts so morally outraged by the games they discuss, or when they say, as an American, I find this unsettling. Just like these work better when they don't overreact, when they don't shove opinions in your face. Anyway, I think that's it for now. This video was a bit ambitious for me, as it's the first serious commentary I've done, and it was on a rather long top 20 list video. I don't know, I might have bitten off more than I can chew, seeing as I did skip quite a bit, but at the same time, I didn't want to get too deep into nitpicking territory or let this video drag on forever. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Feedback is always appreciated, and if I end up becoming the first CC bandwagon of 2017, I will. But on a more serious note, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the future. Goodbye.